Okay, I took a little break. I'm back for another round of the details for rural communities, small communities, especially in cold climates. What you can do to save time and money as a community, that you can reinvest into equipment that benefits everyone. And I mentioned this idea in another video talking about how the effective altruists ignored me when I was telling them about this one. You brew beer in a carboy with a burping valve because the sugars in the beer mash get turned into carbon dioxide by the yeast, and the carbon dioxide leaves through the burping valve. So you got a couple carboys in a small shed, and you got a tarp lining the inside of the shed so it's airtight. And on the lid is a funnel with the big side out, and that funnel's got to be wide enough for a mosquito. And what's going to happen is as the beer burps carbon dioxide, that is heavier than air. So it slowly fills the shed and the air gets pushed out. Once the shed is full of carbon dioxide, then it starts exhausting carbon dioxide through the funnel. And carbon dioxide is what mosquitoes are smelling to follow to find a victim. So the mosquito flies down the funnel, and inside is only carbon dioxide. There's no air. So the mosquito suffocates. So when you open the lid and your beer's done, you got a big pile of mosquitoes sitting around your beer kegs, and you feed the mosquitoes to chickens because it's got good trace minerals and all kinds of nutrition. And you got beer. So that's a valuable product that you're producing. You're generating revenue that's has value to the community, both the chicken feed and the beer. And you're getting rid of the mosquitoes. It's pretty nice. So that's a simple one. Can help a lot. If you surround a whole region with just a perimeter of beer sheds, then all the mosquitoes that would have gone toward your houses, they stop at the beer shed instead. So it's like a sentry, you know. It's a whole perimeter of mosquitoes, mosquito traps. Another one, and I've mentioned this in a number of different places. This one's kind of wonky, so bear with me. But you want to dig a large funnel-shaped pit. The easiest way to dig, especially when you got a lot of sand and gravel or frozen ground, is with a pressure washer. Pressure washer is going to dig with a lot less effort than anything else. And so you dig this whole funnel shape with a pressure washer, and you're going to be pumping it out with a dredge pump and put it in a settling pond. You can just use one of those plastic kiddie pools as long as it's got tall enough walls. The taller the walls, the better the sedimentation. You're going to get finer grain differentiation between the particle sizes. So you're extracting clays from the sediment of the funnel. Now you got this funnel, and you're going to dig a trench off to one side downhill to catch the wind. And you want to cover the top of this trench with clay or brick or branches. So it's a tunnel into the base of the funnel. And that's the structure of a Dakota fire pit. But we're making it like 6 to 10 feet across. This is a big fire pit. 6 feet across for like something people can sit around and gather. 10 feet across if you want to turn it into a really hot kiln. And there are a few different designs to layer on top of this. You put loose bricks around it at the entry of the pit. And if the bricks are just angled slightly and spaced slightly so that the first layer of bricks has air gaps, then those air gaps on the first layer are going to pull air as the flame goes up. The flame's pulling up, and it creates suction that pulls air on that first layer of bricks. The higher layer of bricks, there's no air gap, but the bottom layer of bricks got an air gap. That's going to pull the air in to the hot zone, and it burns the creosote, the uncombusted gases. And so that's the effect of a rocket stove. It's doing the same kind of thing. And if those bricks are aligned at an angle around, like a spiral, then as the air flows in, it's going to be flowing in along the edges on each side, and it's going to form a vortex. And that vortex means that the path of the flame is longer within the hot zone. So you get an even better combustion. And then the flame is coming up out of the fire pit as a tall, contained funnel. It's a tunnel of, well, fire-nado. So that's how you get a vortex rocket stove for cheap and easy. And it's big. And you can use the ash at the bottom. Once you've accumulated a bunch of ash, now you can layer an inner wall of bricks, solid, and an outer wall of bricks, and you put the ash between those two walls. So you got ash insulation between the two layers of brick. And you build up like a honeycomb shape, or I mean a beehive shape. And that you also want to paint ash on the inside of the walls. The inner layer walls, paint some ash on it. And that acts as a refractory. It reflects the heat back into the furnace. So it keeps more heat inside. So that's a cheap and easy way to build a nice solid kiln or furnace. And that'll get really hot. And if you dig other pits around that pit, then you can fill them with embers at the base. And now you have big jugs, ceramic jugs or steel drums that you fill with debris, leaves and twigs and whatever else is going to burn. You cap it off with a vent. And now when that jug is placed in the ember pit, the embers are going to roast the material and pyrolyze it. Pyrolysis is where the chemistry breaks down, and instead of burning as flame, because there's no air inside of the jug, now the gas that produced from the woody material is going to come out of the pipe, and you're going to vent it into the intake tunnel. The intake tunnel where the air was being sucked into the Dakota fire pit, that's where you pipe this wood gas. And you also want a flashback arrestor, which you can make as just a section of pipe with some steel wool in it, something that's not going to combust easily, and it prevents a backflash so that the gas doesn't ignite inside the barrel. So you got the pipes flowing down into the tunnel that leads into the funnel of the Dakota fire pit, and you've surrounded it with 2 layers of brick wall with ash insulation and ash refractory. So now inside of that pit you can support a stand on brick of a crucible, and that crucible is going to be filled with sand and straw ash and some crumbled lime, and it's going to melt. The wood gas burns much hotter than normal wood fuel would. Just wood by itself burns at a certain temperature. The wood gas burns at nearly double the temperature. So this is like, you could do iron smelting if you wanted with these gases. But that's going to melt the sand and the straw and the lime into glass. You're going to have a crucible full of glass, molten glass. And so you want to let it slow cool, and then you're going to pull the crucible out and chip away the crucible. It's destroyed. So I recommend making crucibles out of ash because it can withstand the high temperatures and it's sacrificed. So you're chipping away the ash. Now you've got this big ball of glass. You're going to set up what's called a pressure flaking jig, which is just a lever arm. And on the inside of it, it's got a piece of antler. And you can push it down with the lever, like a crowbar, and use the antler to flake off the outer edge of this ball of glass. This is the obsidian flaking technique that was used in the Neolithic era. So you're flaking off the outside edge, kind of like leaves on an artichoke. And you can draw hundreds of blades from a single ball of obsidian. The trick with doing this, because you look online, most pressure flaking jigs, they have to like flake the platform that they're going to flake off of. So you got the ball of glass, they have to flake off the top to get a nice platform angle, and then they flake the platform, and they have to apply so much pressure to that platform that it usually crumbles or it kicks off a blade with such force that the blade shatters. So there's a high loss rate of blades, which means you don't get as many blades per ball of glass, and there's a lot of work done to prepare the platform for your pressure flaking. You can avoid all of that If you get a garnet stone from riverbed and crush it, you get a sharp edge on your garnet. Now you make a scribe line. You cut into the top of the glass with your garnet. Once glass has been cut like that, it flakes 10 times easier, and it flakes along that scribe line. So you can now flake thin blades with a nice straight profile using your garnet as your scribe. And the other thing is you want to wet that scribe line. Once the glass is wet, there's a slight tear in the surface of the glass where your scribe line was. And once water molecules get in that spot, they actually work chemically to unzip the glass. It makes it 3 times easier to fracture. So you're getting 30 times easier fracture by making a scribe line and wetting it first, which means you don't have to apply as much force on the pressure flaking jig, so you're not going to crumble your platform. You're able to flake off a thinner blade, and it won't be pushed so hard that it shatters. So you get a higher percentage yield of blades because each one's thinner and fewer of them broke, and you didn't have to spend as much time making the platform for each blade. So this will let you get a lot of glass blades from a single blade core. And that might sound kind of silly because you think to yourself, well, we got metal blades now. Aren't those better? No, they're not. Glass blades are a lot sharper. And there's a very simple thing you can do to make glass much stronger than the stuff you buy at a discount hardware store utility knife. You take those blades, put them like they're plates on a drying rack. You got a ceramic rack you're going to put in an oven, hot oven, pizza fire oven. And once the glass is completely hot, you're going to take that tray and dunk it into a vat of old urine. You put a lid on it and let it sit for a while, mixed with wood ash. It's got to be wood ash because wood ash contains potassium, and the potassium gets dissolved into the urine. It's ammonia. And the potassium is what's going to penetrate the surface of the glass. The outer skin of that hot glass will absorb potassium ions. And now once the outer skin is potassium, it creates a pressure on the surface of the glass. And that pressure holds the glass together and prevents fracture. You have just made bulletproof glass. That's the actual recipe. So with bulletproof glass, it's not going to flake as easily. It's going to hold that sharp edge a lot longer. And when you do need to replace it, it was a lot cheaper to make than a metal blade. And they require much less fuel than forging with metal. Forging with metal, you have to take large pieces of wood that you convert into charcoal, which you've lost 80% of the fuel potential by turning it into charcoal, the fuel you have to burn. And you're consuming good wood to do it. But with this method, using the pyrolysis jugs, you're able to take leaves and twigs and straw and turn it into fuel. And you're not losing as much of the energy in the process. So a bulletproof glass axe or bulletproof glass hand blade, even arrow points and spear points if you want. Burins, scrapers, the whole 9 yards, the entire Neolithic toolkit. You want to make it bulletproof, you'll thank me. And I can get into more details of all the other parts. That's good for now. Bulletproof glass axe.